Welcome back to the Means Report. Thanks so much to Jordan Johnson for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk about the big things happening in Augusta. Now let's talk about big news all across the country and around the world, really, for that matter. It's the political situation in the United States. And here to help us answer some key questions about that is the University of South Carolina-Aiken Associate Professor for Political Science, Sarah Young. So pleased to have her come over from the All-America City today. Sarah, welcome to the Means Report.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And let's just launch right into it. And we'll start at the top with President Joe Biden. In the past few days, we have seen the news break that he was going to step down to abandon his re-election bid. We have not seen such since the late 1960s when President Johnson did the same thing. My question is, did any of this surprise you? It seems like a lot is happening.
To be frank, it did surprise me quite a bit. I think that's been the sentiments of a lot of folks. The age question's always been sort of thrown around with Biden, but from everything we could see, the party was very well united around him. He had no real competition in the primaries. So it seems like what happened is, based on his debate performance, it just created a lot of red flags among the party leadership. They saw his polling tank, they saw the money drying up. And when the money dries up, that's a huge red flag to party leaders. So when he lost the confidence of the leaders in his party, it seems that he was convinced that the best thing to do was to bow out. But it was a very fast turn of events.
It really was. And I want to dig deeper into that and ask you what you think of how the process played out and, you know, how it jives with what's allowed and what's not politically. But let me just move on to the next step that we've been witnessing, and that's the apparent pending nomination of Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee. Take us behind the scenes. Do all of his delegates just automatically go to her? How's that whole thing work?
So the big thing about nomination processes that people need to understand is that the party still largely controls them. They're not like a general election. So the party does have control of those processes, and they control those processes through their bylaws and also the Rules Committee. The current bylaws for the Democratic Party say that a candidate needs to seek nomination, and they do need to run in primaries. And through those primaries, they earn enough what we call pledged delegate spots. Then the official mechanism for them becoming the nominee is they have to go to some sort of nomination convention and then seek the nomination that way, usually on the floor of the convention.
Right.
But what we have actually seen with this is in the unusual situation where the candidate that actually earned the delegates through the primaries decided to drop out, about a month before. So it's not like all of those delegates automatically shift from Biden to Harris. She's got to earn those through this official nomination process. And that's what we're going through right now. But it seems like from reports from Associated Press and other places that there is, I believe you expressed it as a committed show of support. So those delegates are saying they are willing to shift their support to Biden, from Biden to Harris, but they are just saying it. So the official process would have to take place in the nomination convention where they vote for her. She has to earn those delegate spots. She has to convince them to come on board her.
Okay, and so that's what we can watch when we tune into the Democratic convention next month, is the folks there, the delegates, making everything, as you described, official.
Well, under most circumstances, yes, that nomination process occurs on the floor of the convention. But we have another unusual situation. So to add to the complexity, the Democrats decided months ago that they were going to actually do their nomination process through a virtual voting process.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
And that would be 2 weeks before their convention. They were saying they had to do that to meet deadlines to get their nominee's name on the ballot in Ohio, because Ohio says we need the names of your nominees by, I believe it was August 9th. So they wanted to make sure that they could get it on there. So they actually front-loaded it as a virtual process, and they're saying they're going to continue to do that virtual process. So what the convention itself is going to be is sort of a showcase of the nominee, a PR event, you might say, so that the party can speak to voters. They'd probably be laying out their issue platform, but the nominee will already have been decided in this virtual process.
Do the donations work the same way as the delegates, where that funding, because Vice President Harris was a part of the Biden-Harris ticket, she is entitled to those campaign funds right away?
Well, there's a little bit of uncertainty about that too. The fact of the matter is that she has moved ahead to take use of those campaign funds. Her name was on the ticket, and when he bowed out, he said, this is Biden, said that we will change the name of the campaign from the Biden-Harris campaign to the Harris for President campaign. So her name is technically on those filings. She's moved forward. Associated Press has reported that she does have access to the $96 million that was accumulated in the war chest. It's also important to note that one day, 24 hours after her announcing her interest in the nomination and taking over the campaign as the Harris for President campaign, she earned a record-breaking, I think it was $81 million in 24 hours on her own.
Right.
So this is additional money that's coming in. So for all intents and purposes, she's moving forward with it. Now, I will say that there's been some reports that the Trump campaign has filed an FEC complaint about this, saying that she can't just take the money. It's not clear, though, that that would actually be addressed before the election is over. And some pundits on television and experts have said they don't really think those legal challenges would fly. So, but there is that kind of swirling suggestion of it out there. This is politics in America these days.
No, it is. And speaking of politics in America, is this fair? Is all of this above board and fair? Because skeptics would say, oh, Joe Biden may not have been performing as well, either debate-wise or polls-wise, as we thought. Let's just switch in midstream. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, the party decides.
Yeah, they're
right?
totally in control.
And they haven't yet put the name on the ballot. And most the studies I've done on this, most legal experts say if his name was already on the general election ballots as the official nominee, if they had gone through that official nomination process, there would be questions for them trying to switch out. But because they haven't actually engaged in the official party nomination process, at this point, legally, there's probably not any problem with it. Now, the other question is how this is going to look to the voters and how this is going to look to the Democratic base that did vote for him. But the party is comfortable with this. I mean, when they saw the record donations come in, also the volunteers, many new volunteers have signed up after Harris joined at the top of the ticket. They're confident that this is something that the Democratic base, at least the Democratic base, is going to accept and welcome even.
What about other Democratic candidates? I believe the proper term is down ballot candidates on the Democratic ticket. Do you think they should be concerned about these changes at the top? Might it impact their chances, or do you think most Democrats and most Republicans are straight ticket voters?
Yeah, so the key about presidents and how they can affect down ballot races, or presidential candidates, I should say, rather, is that they have a powerful impact in either bringing people out to the polls, or the voters can be apathetic and not want to come out to the polls. People come out to the polls generally to vote for the president. So if they come out, they're excited about a candidate from one party, there's a better chance that they're just going to go ahead and mark Democrat or mark Republican for the others, right? If they don't show up at all, there's no chance of that. And so that was one of the things that the party insiders in the Democratic Party were very concerned about, is that if people just decided we're not going to show up to vote for Biden, they would forego all of those possible Democratic votes for down ballot races as well. Now, in South Carolina, which is the state that I work in, it's probably going to, that process will probably advantage Trump more. We also have straight ticket voting in South Carolina where someone can just mark one party and then they, by default, vote for everyone from that party. And so in South Carolina, Republicans are probably advantaged by the excitement or mobilization around Trump, but the Democrats are betting that this is actually going to bring out more Democratic voters and actually help their chances of securing Congress, as well as state house races in November.
Probably have time for one or two more questions. The first one has to do with polls and whether we should trust them, because I'll find sometimes I'll get on my phone and I'll see a poll and I'll think, I wonder if that poll showing Trump or Biden or Harris ahead or behind is accurate. I'll just scroll a little bit more until I find a poll that's different than that. And there are so many, and it's so overwhelming and confusing. Should we trust polling, especially this far out?
So the thing about polls, the number one thing I tell the students in my class about polls is, first of all of these polls about the national vote, like how do U.S. voters view one candidate versus the other, completely meaningless to this process. We don't elect our president through a nationwide popular vote. We elect our president through the Electoral College. And the electors are usually selected through a process that is attached to the state popular vote. So if we're looking at polls, we really need to be looking at the state contests. That those national polls don't matter. It's not that we can trust them or not trust them. There might be some useful information in there at just a public opinion level, but they don't tell us anything about the actual process that selects a president. So we should look at the state polls if we look at any. But the other thing I would say is that really it's probably more useful to make our choices based on the policy issues, the values of the candidates. Trying to gauge who we're going to vote for based on who's up or down in a poll is probably not the best way to vote. And then the last thing I would say is just one of the reasons we see variations in polls is because of the sampling strategies used. The polls use different sampling strategies. If they don't sample and they don't get a sample that's truly representative of the likely population of voters, they're probably going to get various results, depending on that. So all of those things come into place with polls. Just go with the issues that matter to you. That's the important thing that we should be doing.
No, it is. And what a great perspective to help us look at polls in the right light. I appreciate that so much. And I knew I should have booked you for the entire means report because our time has flown by. But I hope you'll come back. And I can't thank you enough for helping us and sharing your insight.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Sarah Young, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of South Carolina-Aiken. When we come back, how you can help shape future editions of the Means Report. It is easy to stay in touch with us. We'll show you in just a moment.